we'll introduce the rest of today's panel and then we'll get into it. So joining us is Jeff Drudge from Drudge Farms, Henry Prinzen, lead agronomist for Maizex Seeds here in Ontario, Mitch Ross with Locust Woods Farms. And as Mo mentioned, really the goal today is to have a discussion, and then if we have time, we'll open up for questions, but to have a discussion on, how can we strive for higher yields? What do we need to do as we look at the operations in different parts of Ontario here and represented in the room? As Mo mentioned, we were talking about high yields, and in some parts of the countryside this year, it's dramatically different. We've been fortunate down in the Chatham area, or at least our part of Chatham-Kent, to have decent rainfall. And this year we were cooperating with a company, and we had 8 weather stations across the countryside. I had one on my farm, and Henry had one on his farm. And if you look at where I was at in Chatham-Kent, I did a cutoff of all the weather stations from June 5th, because before June 5th it was, we had decent moisture pretty much everywhere to too much moisture. And since June 5th at my place we're running on over 10 inches, so 255 mils basically is where we're at. And then we go down to the bottom end of the spectrum and everywhere else is in between, but up near Lindsay was 63 millimeters. And when we go to that area, you're looking at less than half of the bean crop in some cases, and tight on corn. I just came back from Quebec yesterday. I was down there for a couple of events, and the corn crop and the bean crop certainly looks tough in a lot of those areas. They're looking at, minimum probably a 20% yield reduction from last year. And then, not that it's a big market, but it certainly will have helped on the basis side. But the Maritimes, I was talking to our representative there this morning, and in Nova Scotia, you've got a lot of fields that have already been written off in the valley because there's just nothing there. They were super wet in the spring and planted wet. You know what happens in that situation when it turns dry, and they haven't had a drop of rain since. So, but our focus today is to talk about something more positive, which is we aim for 26. What are we going to do for yields and to strive for higher yields? So we'll start. We'll go around across the way here, Jeff. If you want to tell us a bit about where you're located in your operation and what you're up there.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Drudge. I'm part of a family operation in the Listowel-Wingham area, so here in the county. We work about 2,000 acres mixed crop. We have corn, beans, wheat, edible beans, canola, and oats. So we have a 6-way rotation. Everything's no-till, except we do a little bit of BT tillage on oats that we're going into planting our canola. We also are diverse in our operation in that we're operating a satellite grain receiving location for Pencil Co-op. We've had that for a number of years now. And our family operation, we make maple syrup as well. So we've got a lot of stuff on the go. And plus I sell seed on the side.
So Henry Prinzen, I'm an agronomist with Maizex Seeds, but we also have a family farm back at home. We have 2,000 sows, fair through finish, so that helps manure. It does help make good corn. We also farm 1,600 acres, cash crop, corn, soybean, wheat rotation.
Yeah, I'm Mitch Ross from Chatham-Kent, cash crop, soybeans, corn, and seed corn from Maizex. Finishing pigs, custom business, custom farming, harvesting mostly, and trucking business. So, and I'm a seed dealer, I guess. So that's what's up with.
So we'll keep it here. So if you had to look at year over year, what do you think where you're going to be at for your operation and your area this year, Mitch, yield-wise?
Yield-wise, I would say we've been pretty lucky, pretty timely rains. Got everything in decent. Seed corn looks good. Really no complaints, I guess. Fungicide season went well. Yeah, seems to be promising, I guess.
Yeah, so back home we've had sufficient, or maybe not sufficient, but enough rain to have a decent crop. We're probably looking at a little bit above average beans, 10-year average. 5-year, no, we won't hit the big yields. Corn again, probably maybe above the 5-year average, but not no records. Not this year, tough start. But overall, the wheat crop was really good, so that was actually a record crop. So we had enough rain early that the corn kind of held on. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's below our 10-year average. It won't be crop insurance claim, but it's not record either.
We had the reasonable moisture to begin with, pretty dry for the middle of the summer. We've had probably 2 inches of rain end of July, 2 inches of rain in August here, which I think is certainly helping, but I'm guessing we've lost 15, 20 bushels on the corn maybe, and probably 5 on the beans.
So we talk about high yield then. What's, Jeff, in your operation, you know, if you look over the last few years, what have you been doing in terms of some of your practices and approaches and strategies to try and bump up your yield up?
We haven't made a lot of huge changes the last couple of years. VRA is one, variable rate. We've been doing that for probably 10 years. Our soil type is Harrison loam, and our knolls, our higher spots are usually stony or sand, low CEC. So in those areas, I'm not really in the field much, operations wise. My brother and nephew do most of that, but they've been running variable rate for the last 10 years, just cutting the population on sandy hills down to maybe 28, and then 36, 35, 4 to 36 on better ground. Fungicides on corn, we're now doing what we did 20 years ago in wheat. You tried it and did it work, it didn't it work? And last, I'd say 5 years, it's fungicide on everything on corn. Nothing else real outstanding, I guess, in our operation as far as secret tricks, I guess.
Yeah, so for us, you know, I would say fungicide on everything has been for a while now. I mean, with tar spot, it's kind of no-brainer, especially in our area. Variable rate, we are doing that. Fertilizer starter, dry fertilizer, variable rate, and then we do the same with population where it makes sense. A lot of our ground's pretty uniform, heavy clay, so we've been just, you know, to get the higher yields, we've been pushing population, right? Our best farms, we will push to a 36 drop, even on the clay. Yeah, it does need to rain, right? But last year, like, we had a 102-acre farm go north of 260 average, so, you know, pretty good yields considering the soil type. But pushing the population, fungicide, and then, you know, the key on our ground, a really heavy clay, like I said this in Eastern Ontario, it's the amount of pipe we put in the ground, right? Tile is makes the most money. We're putting more tile in the ground again. I said in a group this morning too, I mentioned we have like a little 1-acre field beside mom and dad's. We put her on 10-foot centers. That's really what we need to be on to maximize yield potential, get the water out of the ground, the excess water. But everything else, 20-foot centers, and we just keep tiling every year, just more and more pipe. That's how we get the bigger yields. You know, the guys that don't have tile, it's too many empty holes, too many, you know, coefficient and nitrogen holes. You know, we're split applying nitrogen too to manage that. That we can kind of like, you know, take the crop's yield potential into account, right? Some years we have a really good crop, we can put a little bit more on. This year we had a couple farms that are really good. They got a little bit more than our farms that didn't come up so well because of the cold weather in May. You know, they got slammed in from a big rain, so we backed off the nitrogen a bit. Less yield potential, less plants.
Yeah, we would, a little more simple, but just make sure we put the nitrogen from the pig manure where we want, especially our seed corn. That's kind of where it goes first. Variable rate fertilizer, we've been doing that for a while now. Yeah, fungicide for sure now. Actually, fungicide on beans, and we've went to 30-inch rows. We have really bad white mold pressure. Trying to break up some of the rotation too. Seed corn is kind of a vicious circle. It seems like it's seed corn or beans every year. Some of the farms I've only ever seen beans on the home, so trying to get different crops in there too has actually helped. But fungicide seems to be the key around us. We have a lot of sheltered area. It doesn't get a lot of wind. It's always wet, so that seems to be a key for us. And population-wise, we seem to stay with not variable rate yet, but it's something that we've been kind of thinking about, and actually almost thought about, might not be, but variable rate or variable row spacing. Say like in the tops where it can be lighter, put them in 15s, get it covered, and then where we have the white mold, maybe, I don't know if it's possible yet, but maybe go to 30s or something like that. So just an idea.
I know on the VRPT, the population thing is interesting because like at our place, we I have the precision units and run that, and probably the best payback I've had is actually on our variable soil is on soybeans is what we're doing for variable rate. So that on the knolls, we're cranking the population rate up, and when we know we've got circulation issues, we can drop it right down. That seems to pay dividends. Let's go back here, Mitch. So when you look at in the area in general, then what kind of trends are you seeing in your area? If we talk about fertilizer placement, or if we talk about tillage practices, what kind of changes are you seeing?
Yeah, well, fungicide is the main one. I guess everybody now seems to be, no matter what. Fertilizer, I've had some of my customers talk about split line. A lot less, I guess, tillage practice-wise, a lot less heavy, like deep ripping. Trying to space that out maybe after just a week. Coming in, chopping heads and all that kind of make it a little easier to handle. I actually had one of my guys does relay cropping now, so that's pretty neat to see this year, the wheat and beans. But other than that, yeah, starting to get picky or particular on fertilizer placement, not just dumping it all the sandier ground. We've seen a lot of rainfall, kind of gets rid of some of that at the beginning of the year. So if you can split a pie or spoon feed it, it seems to get more bang for your buck, I guess.
Yeah, so a couple things. Definitely the split ply nitrogen is a big catch on tile. Like we've been tiling for almost 15 years. There was really not much tile in Haldeman, like where we were when we started. It was systematic, right? It was randoms, but now, I drive around this time of year and there's plows everywhere. Every company has a plow in Haldeman right now going. Everyone's burying pipe, so that's a big push. Fungicide, again, is a big push, and, once tar spot came, everyone kind of realized that, it was a no-brainer. The guys that were more progressive were maybe there already. They were seeing the benefits, late season plant health, getting that extra yield out of the corn that you don't really see those bigger, heavier kernels, right? So that was, a big factor. And then, zone sampling, variable rate line is some really low-hanging fruit on a lot of farms, like lighter soils or heavy soils. VR lime has been a real big payback. I know we have farms, 100-acre farm, we only did 5 acres with lime, but we put a lot of lime on 5 acres, and we didn't put a lot of lime we didn't put lime anywhere else. So that in itself, on all those farms, we did zone sampling. We paid for the sampling like 10 times over by just doing variable rate line. And we're seeing the payback, especially in wheat. Wheat hates low pH, so we do see some pretty big paybacks there. And even just fine-tuning our micros and our starter. We're driving starter at home, so making sure we have a little bit of more on there, whatever that is that Aspire, a frill with everything in it. We look at more of those options. K-Mag, we talked about polysulfate, stuff like that, just making sure we have, some of those micros in for O2 to maximize yield potential.
I would say in our community, fungicide and corn is more happening. Tar spot is mostly just a conversation we hear about. We're far enough north. Hopefully it stays that way for a few more years. But I'd say in general, the community you see more helicopters, high clearance sprayers, that type of thing. It's probably the biggest change in the last few years. I think it depends a lot on the operation. If you have a 100-acre or 200-acre farm and the operator is a full-time working off the farm, then those guys aren't quite as aggressive at looking for cutting edge stuff. So it kind of depends on who's operating the land.
I think the good news on tar spot, there seems to be, in my history in this industry, in certain winters when you have a big issue, and if you talk about it enough during the winter, you don't have it the next year. And that seems to be the case for the most part on tar spot for this year so far. We'll just keep talking about it. So very good. So let's go forward, and if we look over the next few years and you're looking at your operations, where do you see the biggest bang for your buck in terms of where we should be investing as we look forward? And Henry, I'm going to preface that statement by saying this time you cannot say drainage, so go ahead, Jeff.
Two things that I guess we're looking at in our operation. This spring, we post-planting, we have a 2140 K-sites drill that like an interplant, so 1530, it's a 12-row, 24 unit we use for most of our beans. And So post-planting, my brother's outfitting that with row cleaners. There's a row cleaner kit for those narrow rows now. So we're gonna use that to plant our canola. Canola, we're planting winter canola at 2 or 3 pounds an acre, so placement is really key. So that's an investment, like $1,200 a roll, whatever it is. So we're gonna try that, see if we can get better success. We can also use that maybe in beans. The other thing we've been watching is the 5-inch planting options for wheat. The unit we have now is a Salford unit. It's probably 15, 20 years old. Salford no longer makes that particular unit. We really like it. So at some point we're gonna have to look at another way to plant wheat. So that's probably 2 things we're looking at.
Yeah, so back home, we recently put a lot of money into the planter, right? Variable rate, furrow force, closing that furrow, we find really important on the clay. Our next step, what we're looking at is actually probably, we're still drilling beans, honestly, and, I think to grow better beans, we do want a little bit better placement. We made the drill work and work really well, actually, but I think there's some maybe more low-hanging fruit there by going to a planter. I don't think it's big, but I think there's some. I think we've got our planter, our drill figured out, but there's some seed savings to be done there, right? Row shutoffs, like we don't have that on the drill. So that's the story, and then, even sprayer, we have a high clearance sprayer, but just getting the right sprayer to get over those acres when we need to, because timing is so critical on fungicide. And then, we're gonna the whole farm is now, I think this is we're on year 4, so the rest of it, this is likely the final year we get zone sampling on all our farms. So now everything will be zone sampled, and we're going back to the first farm. So just keep managing the fertility on the zone level. We're actually, we have hogs, so we're mining those soils, those zones that are really high, and I'm, trying to put more fertilizer in those zones that are low. So save some money by, zone sampling, placing our fertilizer where we need it, and, using the soil bank, what we've built up over the years, a little bit more on those other zones.
Yeah, I think back to kind of split applied nitrogen. One of my customers actually has a wide drop pull type sprayer. He uses it for edible beans and actually side dressing the corn. So I like that idea. I don't really want to wait for him to come do it, so it would be nice to have one myself. And the other thing would be for us, grain storage. We don't really have much. We started when my grandpa and them were still doing it. It was all seed corn. We didn't really need any. And it seems to be nice to have some more. So that's kind of one thing I would like to expand on. That and then some more of the planting capabilities, some of the same stuff they said. Just getting the seed in the right spot seems to be key. So yeah.
Very good. Mo, how are we doing for time? We got 5 minutes? Or?
Yeah, you have another 8 minutes.
8 minutes, very good. Is there any questions from everybody here for our panel? Any questions from the floor? Over here.
What about urea coated instead of the split application, 28 urea coated, ESN, some of those?
Yeah, so the question is about ESN or coated urea and using that in place of a split application.
So, I think that's a really good fit on an operation where maybe you don't have the capabilities to split. I think we saw some maybe hiccups with over-the-top applications this year, right? We need a lot of rain to wash that urea in. I think Y drops or, split applying that way, you do maybe can get away with a little less rainfall. Your placement's a little better. That's my thought. But if you're an all-up-front guy, for sure, coated urea is a really good option. Half coated urea, pure yield, ESN, whatever, or even, we should be using stabilizers on that stuff too, right? If we're using normal urea, we're stabilizing all our 28. But I do think coated urea is an option. Because we have our own sprayer, I'm not a coated urea guy. I guess my other thing with coat or dry is how accurate are we spreading that, right? We look a lot of wheat fields. Some of the spreaders out there are probably not spreading the fertilizer as well as we'd like to see. But if you have one of those spreaders that has that capability, for sure, that's a great fit. But for us, that's why we're liquid and we have the sprayer, so that's where we stick.
Jeff, Mitch, any comments?
Well, last year on the Agronomist site, we did all up front ESN, and then we did come back in with 28%. And it was a really sandy farm, and we had a lot of rain. And we found, we have a picture of it, where the 28% application happened, and we were side by side. The 28 application was still green, like 10, even 2 weeks or so after, because it just seemed like the ESN kind of got washed out from the sandy soil. So it depends, I think, on the soil too, but that was kind of the first hand thing we saw last year, because we're actually all up front, mostly with seed corn and all that. They've always wanted us to be. We use ESN. On the commercial corn side, we played with the side dressing, but with the sandy soil, we find that it's just a little more stable, maybe. So.
Any other questions? Peter, I thought you would have one.
Well, I'm not 40 years old, Peter, so it took me 40 years.
Peter, you never disappoint, do you? 6 crops is a lot of crops to manage. We've toyed with that idea. Should we go back to 3? It's kind of worked for us. What was your other question? Winter canola. Little bit of slug damage. Not terrible on the winter canola. We had, for a no-tiller's nightmare, this spring was the perfect storm. We had a bit early corn, 10th of May or whatever, and then it was cool and wet, and so we had some fields that looked absolutely horrible. So no-tilling is not the be-all, end-all. It's just a different set of problems. But as far as your question on the canola, we haven't had a ton of issues with slugs on that.
For deep ripping, I guess, yeah. There's still a lot of let's sock her down and make the tractor slip, but I just think that it's a little more, it's not just one mind, one thought, just go, go, go. I think it's more, vertical tillage, the high-speed discs seem to be a huge thing around us right now, whether it's a fad or not, I don't know, but it just seems to be a little more thought gone into it rather than just every year hook up to the ripper and go. Now that being said, after tomatoes or specialty crops, then that's still kind of a thing to pop the compaction, but just a normal, rotation guy, it seems to be a high-speed disc or vertical till seems to be a common practice. So.
Yeah, I mean, on a tillage perspective back home, we were no-till beans into corn stalks, no-till beans on beans, no-till wheat into beans. With big corn yields, we have got a VT now. I personally, I might offend some people, but I don't love high-speed discs. I think they make cement just lower down. The VT, it's more of a, we're hitting it in the fall actually, and then just no-tilling, whatever, maybe not a true no-tiller, no-tilling my beans in. Getting away from spring tillage, we find spring compaction kills. I myself do like the ripper in wheat stubble to get air into that clay for the corn. But a lot of our farms we're actually leveling and just no-tilling into in the spring. I got some camelina on order. We're gonna try winter camelina on 100 acres. Then we're gonna try no-tilling into that. I wanted to do that instead of oats because volunteer wheat is a really big challenge for me. It's sucking my moisture out. We want a cover crop on this fields that we're no-tilling into. So we're gonna try winter camelina. We're gonna do a whole field, give it a go, and then come back with, we're gonna kill the wheat and we're not gonna kill the camelina. That's the goal. And then leave it over winter to get some ground coverage. That's we're gonna give that a go because you know, we don't like losing our soil, but I still think for our clay back home, we need some tillage to maximize our yield potential for corn.
One last question, anybody? All right, very good. Well, we really appreciate Jeff and Mitch and Henry. Thanks for your time and participation today. And thanks again to everybody for your time today on the yield tour. I know it rained a bit at the end. We've done this, 10 years? And this is the first time we've had any sort of rain. Normally everybody's looking for cover because it's too hot. So it was kind of a different today for that. So thanks very much, and thanks very much to the panel.